There are some places in this world that feel completely normal during the day. People come in, they eat, they talk, they laugh, and then they leave, without ever realizing what was really there. But when night gets deep, when the lights grow dim, when the last customer walks out, that's when those places reveal their true face. This story is about one of those places. In an old neighborhood in Japan, there was a small washoku restaurant. A weathered wooden sign, a sliding door, tatami mats covering the floor inside, low tables, soft yellow lighting on the walls, and the constant smell of grilled fish and dashi hanging in the air. I used to go there often. I liked the quiet. The food was simple, but it felt comforting. The elderly people in the neighborhood always said the same thing. Don't stay after closing. I'd just smile, brush it off as rumors. But that night, I made that mistake. That night, I went there with a close friend. The clock was already creeping toward closing time. The dining room was completely empty, except for us. The waitress came over. There was something strange about her expression. Her eyes stayed lowered. Her movements felt tense, uneasy. As she walked down the corridor toward the kitchen, her footsteps echoed way too loudly. Like the hallway was longer than it should have been. Or like we weren't actually alone. We sat there quietly. Then suddenly, the light above our table flickered. Both of us looked up at the same time. The light steadied again after a few seconds. But those seconds felt heavy, uncomfortable. Then the silence broke. Something fell. Chopsticks hit the tatami floor. They had fallen from the table beside us. That table, where no one had been sitting all night. My throat went dry. My friend straightened up in his seat. And then, I felt a very light tap on my shoulder. Not aggressive, not sudden, just enough to say, "I'm right here." I spun around. There was no one. When I looked forward again, the waitress was just stepping out of the kitchen, holding our trays with both hands. My mind couldn't make sense of it. We started eating. The food tasted exactly the same as always, but every bite felt heavy. The silence in the room had grown so thick, I could hear my own breathing. Then, the kitchen lights went out. From inside, I heard the soft clinking of dishes being handled, like someone was working very carefully. And then, a loud crash came from the kitchen, like someone had angrily thrown a pan onto the floor. We froze. The kitchen was completely dark. Nothing moved. No one appeared. When the waitress came back with the bill, her face looked empty, lifeless. She bowed and set the bill down, but her hand was shaking. We didn't say a single word. We paid, and we left. As the sliding door closed behind us, the light above the entrance flickered one last time. After that night, I started digging into the history of that place. And what I found was worse than any rumor. About 50 years ago, the owner of the restaurant was known to be a harsh man. One night, he had a violent argument with his wife, who was pregnant. In his rage, he struck her, not knowing there was a child growing inside her. She lost the baby, and with it, she lost her sanity. People say after that, she would sit alone in the kitchen for hours, talking to the walls, crying late into the night. Then sometime later, in that very kitchen, she killed her husband. Even now, locals say, the man's spirit still wanders the dining room, moving around the tables, touching customers, and the woman's spirit remains trapped in the kitchen, waiting for the one who took her child. When I think back to that tap on my shoulder, I still feel a chill run through my body. Was it him asking for forgiveness, or just trying to remind me that he's still there? Or maybe he was only trying to say one thing: you're never really alone here. And maybe every time someone stays in that restaurant after closing, the story comes back to life. So if you ever find yourself in an old neighborhood in Japan, and you see a quiet washoku restaurant closing its doors, remember this: after closing time, not every place is empty. Some places aren't just pieces of land. They don't just exist. They hold things, memories, pain, and sometimes spirits. In the city of Hokkaido, Japan, there was one such house. And in the yard of that house, there was an old well. This is the story of the man who lived beside that well, and of what he saw. Because once you see something like this, you're never the same again. I live in Hokkaido. My house was normal. Nothing special about it. Except for one thing. Behind some overgrown bushes, next to an old half-broken shed, stood a stone well. Old, weathered, like it had been there forever. I don't know how long that well had existed. All I knew was that it was there long before I moved in. Sometimes I draw water from it, just for watering plants. That's it. Other than that, I avoided getting close to it. Why? I honestly didn't know. Something about it just made my chest feel tight. Like my body knew something my mind didn't. The area I live in has always had a reputation. People say the land itself is haunted. At night, when everything goes quiet, you can hear things in the air. Faint voices, weak, almost like prayers drifting in from far away. At first they scared me, but over the years, I got used to them. The voices kept fading, like time itself was slowly erasing them. I told myself they were nothing more than echoes, leftovers of souls long gone. I was wrong. The day I decided to have the well sealed, everything changed. That very night, dogs from distant houses started barking, howling, all of them facing my property. The weird part, there was nothing there. Nothing I could see, at least. But those dogs acted like they were staring straight at something. Something invisible to me. A few nights later, something else started happening inside my house. As I lay half asleep, I felt it. A dull knocking, coming from beneath the floor. Not loud, not aggressive, just close, like something underneath the ground was trying to make itself known. I'd get up and check. Everything looked normal. But the moment I lay back down, that feeling came right back. Then came the evening. That changed everything. The sun was setting when I looked toward the well, and I saw it. At first, I thought it was an animal, crouched low to the ground. But then it started to rise, slowly, stretching upward. It didn't have a clear face, no eyes, no features, just a blurry human shape, made of shadow. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. It just stood there. And then, right in front of me, it vanished. My heart pounding. I walked over to the well. The ground around the stones was wet. That made no sense. It hadn't rained in days. Standing there, I had this horrible thought, like the well had swallowed something back inside, like it had pulled it down. The next morning, the priest arrived to perform the ritual. The air felt heavy, oppressive. The yard felt like it was holding its breath. As the ritual began, I could tell something was wrong. Later, the priest admitted it. "This place," he said, "something here doesn't want to leave." Fear sat heavy in his voice, the kind you can't fake. Once the ritual ended, and the well was finally sealed, everything stopped. The dogs went quiet. The knocking never returned. That shadow was never seen again. It felt like it was over, like it was done. But even now, when the night grows deep, I still hear those distant prayers. They don't feel threatening anymore, almost harmless. But I know the truth. What came from that well wasn't just a memory. It wasn't an echo. It was alive. It was active. And it was close. So the real question is, whether it's gone or not, the real question is, did it truly leave? Or is it just silent now, still waiting somewhere nearby? Imagine this: a village where the air feels heavy the moment evening falls, where people shut their doors before sunset, and where even mentioning one place makes grown men go quiet. This story begins about 45 to 50 years ago, when my mother was just a little girl. It was summer vacation. My mother was staying at her elder sister-in-law's house in a small village called MJVAnimations. The village was old, narrow lanes, houses built from mud and stone, and at night the entire place felt lifeless, like everything was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. But the most terrifying thing in that village was an old well. People said this wasn't a normal well. They said it was haunted. The elders warned the children strictly, "Don't go near that well. Whatever lives there doesn't let kids come back alive." But when you tell kids not to do something, that's exactly what they want to do. One day, when all the elders were busy with their work, my mother and her closest friend slipped out of the house quietly. They had only one goal: to see the well. They walked slowly toward the part of the village where almost no one ever went. The well was ancient. Its walls were covered in moss, and inside it was so dark you couldn't see the bottom, just endless blackness. The girls laughed and talked for a bit, but deep down, something felt wrong. Neither of them knew how to swim, so they stayed a few steps away. And then, out of nowhere, a woman appeared in front of them. She was wearing a black sari. Her face was hidden in shadow. Her eyes empty, completely dead. In her hands, she was holding burning coal, wrapped inside her sari. The terrifying part: the coal was on fire, but the cloth wasn't burning. Without saying a single word, the woman moved toward the girls, and suddenly, with one sharp motion, she threw the burning coal right in front of them. In that moment, their bodies froze. Breathing felt impossible. Their minds completely shut down. The very next second, they ran, not looking back, running for their lives, until they reached the house. After that day, my mother and her friend didn't even speak the well's name. But this story wasn't over. A few days later, curiosity took over again. They convinced themselves it was just their imagination. just fear playing tricks. And so, they went back. This time, the well was even quieter than before, like it was waiting for them. Suddenly, from deep inside the well, a voice rose up. At first it was faint. Then slowly, it grew louder. The voice was calling my mother's friend by name. It sounded exactly like someone close to her. Gentle, familiar, convincing. The voice felt so close, like it was right behind them, whispering directly into their ears. They wanted to scream, but no sound came out. And then, they ran again. That same night, my mother's friend developed a high fever. Lying in bed, she kept saying someone was calling her name. Her eyes were open, but it felt like she was seeing something no one else could. The fever eventually went down, but the fear, it never left. She became quiet, stopped talking much, and at night, she would wake up suddenly, restless and terrified. And then, just a few days later, she died. The villagers said the haunted well had claimed her name. And even today, people say that if you pass by that well, you can sometimes hear children's names being called from inside. And if you answer that voice, you never come back. Sometimes places aren't just places. Sometimes they're memories. Sometimes they're secrets. And sometimes they're alive. This story comes from the mountains of Hokkaido, Japan, a place where everything feels normal during the day. But once night falls, something else wakes up. I went camping there for 2 nights. Just me, my tent, and the endless silence of the mountains. The campsite was small, tucked beside a slow-moving stream. The water was so clear, you could see the stones at the bottom. Deer wandered through the area from time to time, like the land belonged to them more than anyone else. During the day, I didn't feel afraid at all. The air was cold and fresh. The forest felt open, calm, almost peaceful. I rode up there on my motorcycle with a sidecar. The road was empty. No cars, no people, just the forest, and a strange kind of silence. One that wasn't speaking, but felt like it was watching. The first night passed without anything unusual. I lay down inside my tent, exhausted, and fell asleep quickly. All I could sense was the steady flow of the stream, the soft movement of leaves, and distant birds somewhere far away. Everything felt normal. But the second night, that was the night the forest decided it was done staying quiet. I was asleep when my eyes suddenly opened. Not because of a noise, but because of a feeling. The feeling that I wasn't alone. The forest was completely silent. Not peaceful silence, the kind that presses against your ears. The stream, which had flowed strongly the first night, now sounded weak, almost lifeless. The water was still moving, but it felt empty. My body went stiff. My heart started pounding for no clear reason. And then, I heard something. At first, I thought it was just the water playing tricks on me. But then I heard it again. This wasn't an animal. It wasn't the wind. It was a human voice. Very faint, very weak, like someone whose throat was dry from exhaustion. It sounded like a woman. There was fear in her voice. There was exhaustion. And there was the kind of desperation only someone who has been lost for a long time can have. She wasn't speaking full sentences, just broken words, pausing, as if she kept forgetting what she wanted to say. The voice drifted slowly along the stream. One moment it felt close, the next far away. I lay perfectly still inside my tent, even controlling my breathing. It felt like if I moved even slightly, that voice would know I was there. That's when something hit me. If this were a living person, why would they be wandering alone? This deep into the mountains, this late at night, sounding that drained. And then I realized, the voice wasn't just talking. It was searching for someone who could hear it, searching for someone who would respond. And then, just like that, everything stopped. The voice disappeared. The stream returned to normal. The forest felt alive again, as if nothing had happened. When morning came and I stepped out of my tent, everything looked ordinary. Sunlight filtered through the trees. Birds were back. But I knew something had happened that night. As I was leaving, I told the caretaker what I heard. He listened quietly. There was no surprise on his face, only a look in his eyes, like he'd heard this before. He finally said, "People often hear voices in that part of the mountain. And some people don't leave anything behind except their voices." He didn't explain. He didn't ask questions. He just stopped talking. And so did I. To this day, I still don't know who that voice belonged to. Was it one of the people who never made it back out? Or are there things in the mountains at night, caught somewhere between the living and the dead, that sense when someone is alone and let themselves be heard? So if you ever find yourself camping in the mountains at night and a voice calls out to you, remember this: not every voice is asking for help. Some voices are just looking for company.